Hello everyone! What do you call the evening meal? Is it dinner, tea or supper? If you're learning English, you've probably heard all three, but which one is correct? And more importantly, what's actually on the table? If you've been invited to tea in the UK and wondered if you'll be served a cup of tea and biscuits or a full roast dinner, you're not alone. Even native Brits disagree. In this video, I'll explain what to call your evening meal. So, is it dinner, tea, or supper? The surprising answer is all three can be correct, depending on who you are, where you live, and even what time you eat. Let's dig into a deliciously confusing British tradition. In the UK, everyone agrees that breakfast is breakfast. But after that, things get tricky. However, it wasn't always this way. If we go back to medieval England, everyone ate 3 meals. Breakfast at dawn, dinner at midday, and supper at sundown. Dinner was the big feast in the middle of the day, and supper was a lighter meal before bed. Moving forward into the mid-17th century, the word tea entered the English language. Back then it was used to refer to the drink, but by the 18th century it began to be used to describe a light meal eaten in the afternoon or early evening, accompanied by tea. At this time, factories and gas lighting had arrived, and the upper classes slowly moved their main meal of the day, dinner, into the evening. That left a long gap after breakfast, so they invented a light midday meal called luncheon, later shortened to lunch. And as people got richer and lighting improved, dinner slowly moved later and later into the evening. One famous example is the Duchess of Bedford, who was known for eating her dinner as late as 9 p.m. So around 4 o'clock she started having tea with cakes, scones and small sandwiches. Her idea caught on, and afternoon tea became a fashionable tradition for the upper classes. Meanwhile, for working people, the pattern was different. They still had their main meal, dinner, at midday. And after work they came home and have tea. This tea was not just a drink. It could be bread, meat, pies, a proper meal. These social differences influenced word choice. So tea was the evening meal for the working classes and dinner for the upper classes. By the 20th century, especially after World War II, the middle-class pattern of breakfast, lunch and dinner spread across the UK. Hotels, restaurants and etiquette guides all promoted this as the correct way to speak. But older patterns didn't disappear. In many parts of northern England and in rural areas, dinner still meant the midday meal, and tea the early evening meal. And what about supper? In rich households where dinner was in the evening, supper was a small, informal meal even later, maybe after the theatre. In working homes, where they have their tea early in the evening, around 5 or 6, supper was usually just a simple snack before bed. And nowadays, how should you call your evening meal? Depending on where you live or your social background, you might call the same meal by a completely different name. Let's break it down. In Northern England, much of Scotland, and parts of Wales, tea still means the evening meal. It's not a snack, it's not a drink, it's meat, potatoes, and dessert. Head south, and the evening meal is more often called dinner. Midday is lunch. If you say tea down here, people might expect, well, actual tea. So where does supper fit in? Well, in most places, supper just means a late night snack before bed. But in some regions, especially rural ones, it can mean the evening meal, although in Britain is not used very often in that sense. And then there are the delightful in-between cases. Rural areas, older generations, or families mixing terms. Your gran might call midday dinner and evening tea, even if the rest of the family says lunch and dinner. As an English learner, which would you use? If you say dinner for your evening meal, it's understood everywhere. But be aware of other uses so you don't get confused. Today, the social differences are less clear than before. Social mobility, TV, and the internet have mixed old habits together. A young person in the north of England might say dinner, but their parents still say tea. And some traditions don't change. Like, for example, in UK schools, if children eat the midday meal the school provides at the cafeteria, it is a school dinner. But if they take in their own food, it is a packed lunch. And what about Christmas Day? Well, most families have Christmas dinner, whether it's eaten at midday or in the evening. So how do you survive a British mealtime invitation? Listen for clues: time of day, where you are in the UK, and your host's likely background. Dinner, tea, supper. Whatever the word, the real meaning is sharing food, time, and stories. And if you get it wrong, don't worry, you'll still get fed. And that's the best British tradition of all. Now you know your dinner from your tea, and maybe even your supper. Hit like, subscribe, and join us next time for more tasty language bites.